You are listening to a special broadcast of the PC A-Team, courtesy of the Linux distro community. But now a brief word from the founder of the LDC, Voltam.
Hi, I'm Voltam, founder of the Linux distro community. The Linux distro community is a place for people to hang out and discuss Linux distros, software, and open source. The Linux distro community is a community funded by its members for its members. We are a friendly, welcoming community that encourages people who use Linux operating systems and software to share their passion and knowledge with other people. We believe that when people share information freely, everyone benefits. We'd love to see you become a part of the Linux distro community. You can voice chat with us on Mumble or text chat with us in IRC. Head over to linuxdistrocommunity.com for details. Join in today in the sharing of knowledge and the freedom that a Linux operating system gives people. Thank you.
All right, thank you and welcome back. Well, it's been a while since we have done a PC A-Team for tonight's broadcast. This is Linux for Windows users. I think this is good timing, Spatry, because, of course, coming up in April, Windows XP is scheduled to be retired. And Spatry, I caught something really brief on the news. There was a brief survey done about Windows XP, and it said, according to this brief survey, only 11% of Windows XP users are going to switch to Linux. That's not enough in my opinion. But tonight, if you are a Windows user, maybe a Windows XP user, are completely new to this, whatever you call yourself, a beginner, new user, newbie, dummy, and I say that with all the friendship and respect that I can give you because I've been there, done that, you have come to the right show. Now, one thing before I transfer the microphone to Spatry here. Linux OS, okay, we may say Linux operating system, Linux OS, Linux distro, Linux distribution, Linux-based operating system. Technically speaking, I believe Linux in and of itself is not an operating system. It is a kernel. Now you might say, great, what's a kernel? Well, pretend you are on a bridge. On the north side of the bridge, you have your hardware, such as your PC desktop or PC or laptop. On the south side of the bridge, you have your software. Oh, Firefox, VLC. You need something. You need that magic something to connect both sides of the bridge, the hardware and the software. Hence, you have the Linux kernel. Anyway, that's how we describe Linux or a Linux OS. But just to keep it simple tonight, we may say Linux OS knowing that in and by itself technically is not an operating system. Spatry, tell us who's on the show tonight.
Okay, well, we have Infinitely Galactic. Great to see you. It's been over a year. And we also have Matthew Moore on the show. Say hi, guys.
Hello, Linux distro community. Been way too long. Missed you all.
What's up?
You know, Toss, it's funny because we were going to be mentioning this in the news tonight, that 11% of surveyed XP users will be switching over to Linux. Or some people may call this GNU Linux because in essence, it's derived from GNU software running on top of the Linux kernel. Now, arguably, what percentage of GNU products are running on top of most kernels nowadays. So you can call it GNU Linux or you can call it Linux, whichever way you feel comfortable with. But 11% is a lot when you consider that I was reading an article stating that close to 33% of people who are running Windows right now are running Windows XP. And if only 11% of those are switching over to Linux, Toss, that is a lot of people that is going to be switching over.
That's good, but of course that also means, Spatry, that 89% will still get hit with CryptoLocker ransomware. But have no fear, Spatry has a 24/7 hotline on his website, and he will provide support, right?
Well, you can always hop in.
As long as you provide credit card details first.
Yes.
Well, no, I just have a donate button, a cupoflinux.com, but you're more than welcome to come in. It's a great place where I have people from advanced to beginners who have joined the forum. It's a great place to hang out, ask your questions, get your problem solved and that sort of thing. It's a fun forum. I'm in there every day, and then, of course, I have the IRC channel as well. But there are also a number of other places that you can go to as well, as we'll be discussing in the show tonight.
Well, let me just say that, I was once a newbie to Linux, coming from Windows, 95, 98, and so on, up till now, and I absolutely love using my Ubuntu Unity, among other types of Linux operating systems. But I must say, I wish, 9, 10 years ago, I wish there was an Galactic channel. I wish there was a Toss Today channel, a Spatry channel, a Matthew Moore channel, because it would have made it a lot easier for me and for countless other potential people wanting to switch from their current PC Windows, or maybe just out of curiosity. So, folks, you are listening to what I believe is at least some of the best for tonight's broadcast. I am a dual booter. Okay, some of you may know me. Spatry, you paid me a compliment when we first started talking. You called my channel the one-stop shop for dual booters. Thank you. That kind of stuck with me.
I take it back. No, I'm kidding.
Folks, thank you for joining tonight. I have to leave, though, but... Yeah, so, Yeah,
but Matthew Moore is creeping up on you because his show not only caters to people who are dual booting between Windows and GNU Linux, but he also has Mac tutorials on his show as well, iOS and that sort of thing. So, I mean, he's got a hodgepodge of everything on his show.
Awesome. The more the merrier. Hey, listen, I have no ego to bruise. The more I can get in my club or in our club here, I think it's better for all of us. So, terrific.
The more the merrier. Was that like pun intended or?
Sure. Why not? Spatry's on the show, so anything's possible, right?
Uh-oh.
Okay, well, let's get to some newbie talk, as it were, for all the Windows users out there. Windows XP is going to expire come April, I forget what it is. Maybe it's on April 15th tax day. Wouldn't that be something? But listen, if you are using Windows XP, now I'll give Microsoft credit. This thing has been around almost 14 years, and they made it serviceable, stable. It's awesome, but all good things must come to an end. And if you decide to use that past that expiration date, it may not be totally insecure, but I would not recommend you using it. I mentioned something called CryptoLocker, which is a very impressive piece of malware, ransomware. I did a report on it, and this piece of malware, if you get it, it's possible to remove it. It may take up to a couple hours thinking that you're done. Wrong answer. It locks your file. So even though you may be successful in removing your virus, your files are still locked. Oh, you can pay the fee, the ransom. But do you think Toss Today are going to spend 2 hours to remove a virus and still have a lock system? Heck no. Hence, this is why I use Linux. My number one reason why I use Linux is security. Now, there are other nice reasons, lots of choices, speed, and stuff like that. The Software Center has lots of freebies to try it and some paid ones, but my number one reason is security. Let's go around the panel here and see what their number one reason is. IG, what is your number one reason for using Linux?
My number one reason, as voted by a majority of the users out there, is because it's fun. That's ultimately what it comes down to for me. But I would also say, on a more sensible level, the freedom of choice as far as what software you want to run. You don't have to run anything that you don't want to, and you're only using the tools that you want to use, that you enjoy using, and nothing's forced down your throat. You don't have to use anything that you don't want to use, and just that freedom of choice out there is a wonderful thing.
Cool. Matthew?
Yeah, I use Linux basically for the same reason. It is fun to use, and I'm not locked into having to use a system the way a corporation dictates that I use it. I can basically suit it to work the way that I want it to work and learn a lot of cool stuff along the way.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'll have to agree with everybody on the panel here in that, Linux is fun. Does take a little bit of a learning curve, but it's fun. I love the fact that I can just customize it to no end. After taking some time and learning how to use Wine, now I have all of my favorite Windows applications running. The ones I couldn't, I found decent replacements for, and I talk about them on my show all the time. But there is good news that Toss failed to mention is that if you're a business and you're running XP embedded, you've got support until 2015. So you still have a little bit of time to find that replacement. But if you're a home user and you really feel that you must stick with Windows XP, this is something that I suggest that you do. Download a live CD and boot your computer from that to surf the internet, and then just disable your internet access to Windows entirely. You can download files to your hard drive using a live CD. You can securely and safely use the internet, and then still have your Windows XP for running your programs and that sort of thing. Probably not the best way to do it, but I mean, if you're just using it for social networking or reading your email, that sort of thing. But when you're doing gaming and stuff that requires an internet connection, that's probably not a viable option. And for most people that are, doing gaming over the internet, they've already replaced and upgraded to a newer OS.
Right. If I had to pick a second reason, I would have to say fun. It is fun. It is fun to try, different things. I just downloaded the latest Ubuntu 14.04. I believe it's still on alpha. Do not download alphas or betas, folks, if you are new to this. I downloaded it out of curiosity, installed it on the test laptop. There are some bugs, but surprisingly it is stable. But that being said, you should only download, in my opinion, and I believe everyone here will agree, if you are a complete beginner to this, only download something that is labeled LTS. That's going to be the most reliable out of all of them. My top three choices, now there are more than three as far as Linux for PC users, would be Zorin, because it looks like Windows, and if it looks something familiar, you may decide to keep it and feel comfortable. From there, once you get used to it and want to graduate it into something else, maybe try Ubuntu or Linux Mint. I also downloaded a rolling or semi-rolling release. Linux Mint Debian is my first one. I'm also testing that in a machine, an older machine with less than a gig of RAM, so that should be interesting. But generally speaking, if it's an LTS from Zorin, Linux Mint, and there are some others out there that you can probably try, maybe OpenSUSE. I kind of like that. But those three, Linux Mint, Zorin, and Ubuntu would be my top three choices. IG, what would be some of your choices?
I would definitely agree with what you've already said. Zorin OS is a solid choice for anybody looking to transition over from Windows, simply because it looks the same and it acts relatively the same. It's pretty easy to get your head around. If you are used to Windows XP, then Linux Mint is also a very viable option, because it at least the Mate edition or Mate edition runs very similar, like a very similar layout to what Windows XP does. But if you are like a younger person and you've used, lots of tablets and smartphones and whatever, then give Ubuntu a shot, because it's kind of vying in that direction as far as design and the way it works. So that it's worth a shot as well, and it has a large community behind it support wise. But yeah, between those three, you're really pretty well set. But then also, you've got your distributions that are kind of middle of the road, like Mageia or and in some senses Fedora, but I would approach that with a grain of salt, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Matthew, what do you say?
Well, I think I would agree with going towards Zorin or Mint if you're used to a Windows-like interface. But I'm not so sure about sticking to specifically LTS releases for stability, because in my experience, a lot of those Ubuntu-based LTSs, it's hit or miss. I've experienced some wonky behavior myself. I think overall stability in Linux is, it's just a draw of the cards. So I would say find something that you like and just go for that, learn how to use it. And I think at the end of the day, after you get over that learning curve, I think you'll be better off and a lot happier. But, I've picked up Manjaro. I've given Manjaro to a new user before, and it seems to be just as easy to learn to use as a more titled newbie-friendly distro. So pick something you like and stick with it. That's what I say.
Spatry, you like Manjaro. I'm not sure if it's something for complete beginners, even though I love the speed of it, but what say you?
Well, I have to agree. Zorin is probably the best choice for somebody coming over from Windows to the Linux side of things. But the other choice I would give is Linux Lite. They have an excellent community here.
Second that, yeah.
Yeah, Linux Lite is an incredible OS. It's well thought out, and of course, Voltum, the founder of the LDC, is the main developer, and you can also come in here and get support for that as well. But I would recommend Manjaro, but only to a Windows user who has experience, that's had many years of experience with computers. As a matter of fact, I have two people that are on my forum at cupoflinux.com who are beginners and decide to start out with Manjaro. PDQ mentioned in the IRC room Arch Linux. Now, this is only for you die-hard computer geeks out there who really want to get your hands dirty and you want to mess around with the command prompt and you want to really learn what makes Linux tick. I did my, I know IG and I both played around with Arch Linux, and yes, we learned an awful lot about what makes the Linux system tick, but I would not recommend that to a beginner coming over from Windows who really doesn't know how a computer operates. Now, I have my mother, and she's a 70-year-old woman running Linux Lite, and she loves it, and she's able to do her day-to-day things on this, but the thing is, she still relies on me to maintain it for her. But so yeah, I'd have to say between Zorin and Linux Lite, those are the best choices for the beginner. But the geek-minded, they can move on to some bigger and better things. OpenSUSE is another really nice choice as well. So yeah, good choices out there indeed. But at the end of the day, distrowatch.com is a great place to go where you can read up on some of the different distributions, because there are many that have each distribution is tailored for a specific need. So if you're a multimedia enthusiast, there is AV Linux. If you like doing graphics, graphical arts and that sort of thing, there's Blender Ubuntu out there. There's so many different choices. So my advice is, DVDs are cheap nowadays, so you might as well download a bunch of them, burn them to disk, try each one out without even installing them, and use the one that you think that you'd like to use the best.
Yeah, there are. I think Spatry and I once joked about this. There are hundreds, and when you count all the variations, the offshoots, and the forks, there are probably thousands of them, which makes everything all forked up, as I once said. But really, folks, for the Linux beginners, in my opinion, as far as the ones that are truly designed for beginners, that can work pretty much 90% plus out of the box, you can probably count those on one hand, maybe two hands, out of all of them, strictly for beginners now, not for the geeks, but just for the, potential Linux users of the future, maybe on two hands. I would have to agree Linux Lite is terrific. As far as Lite goes, I also like Linux Mint Mate is another good one. There's a version of Zorin, I believe it's called Zorin Lite. But there are many, many, many choices out there. A lot of them may be good, but for the potential new Linux user, I would say at the most you can count the really good ones from what I've seen on two hands. Now, that being said, I've tested 2 or 3 in the last month that were somewhat new to me. And I looked at it because I saw the word Windows and Windows replacement plastered all over the website. Well, naturally, as a dual booter, it got my attention. There was one I tested, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. I won't say the name, but I looked at it. It was totally new to me. I actually liked it. I liked the way it looked, the feel of it. And I got to the end, and I think I said, well, you know what? This looks terrific. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the automatic installer. Let me just click this and see what it looks. And you have to manually do partitions. And I was like to myself, oh my freaking, are you kidding me? You must have been testing a Debian-based distro. I don't know. But here's the thing, Patrick. Here's the thing. Maybe it was. And look, no disrespect to developers and human beings who take the time to make theirs the best it can be. I understand it. I get it. I appreciate it. But please, developers, if you post something on your website that has Windows plastered all over it, assuming that it's going to be a replacement or better than Windows, and you do not have an automatic installer, what planet are you from? That new user, understandably, is going to take a look at it and say, Linux sucks. It's a totally unfair statement, but it is completely understandable. Developers, you can't do that. I'm not going to say that he or she might not be able to figure it out. They probably could. But this is 2014 as of this recording. There is no need, in my opinion, if it's going to be a newbie-friendly distro, there is no need for manual partitioning. It should have automatically, pun intended, an automatic installer. Now, it's possible, even with that, he or she may try it, not like it, and still say it sucks. Well, fair enough. At least you tried. At least they were able to install it fairly easily. But if you're going to tout something, profess something as Windows friendly, and then force that person to do manual partitioning, even though it's not the end of the world, to me, it is completely unfair. All right.
Well said.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I see it. And I've taken flack for that. I get it. I understand. But look, I'm trying to put myself in the mind of a beginner. I want them to feel comfortable. I don't want them to say Linux sucks. Well, maybe some does. You know, Spatry and I have tested some distros that just wasn't there. But the point is, yeah, right. Well, you know, but I don't want that new user to say as a broad general statement, Linux sucks. It is completely unfair. So developers, please make it easy for the new user. All right. Does anybody
IG,
here?
what is your I want to hear, because IG tried to chime in here. I'd like to hear his take on that.
Yes, please.
Actually, I was just holding down the speak key for some reason because I was trying to zoom in on something else. But no, as far as installers are concerned, I've had some very interesting experiences where the installer will try to partition things automatically, and it will give you the promise of sorting it all out automatically, and then all of a sudden you found that it's completely botched your hard drive. That hasn't happened in probably about 2 years, at least from the distributions that I've tried. But definitely the importance of having a really comfortable and well thought out installer is invaluable as far as making a new user comfortable with the choice that they've made to switch to Linux. And even little things like those, the little wizards that some distributions have as far as moving your files and folders or your documents and settings from your Windows partition over to your new Linux system, or even a little thing that I discovered in Mageia the other day, that you can move, all of the fonts that you have installed on your Windows system over to your Mageia install. And it's just a simple one-click solution and just brings all of those things over and just helps you feel more at home in your new Linux OS. And I think it's those little tweaks, it's those little things that can make a new user feel more comfortable with where they're at, because at least they have the appearance of the developers caring about their everyday needs and what they're going to use their computer for.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's get to the end of this and let's talk about expectations of what may or may not work. I think IG, you and I once talked about this in the last show that we did together. I dual boot because I still have to, although lately it seems like 90% of the time I'm using Linux more than Windows 7 and Windows 8. But I think, IG, we agreed that if you pick the best of the best, in terms of a complete replacement for Windows for beginners, I think we can safely speculate that we are between 90 and 95% there. Would everybody agree?
Yep, I would say that's a pretty solid estimate.
Okay. You can expect, if you install something, again, that is not an alpha and not a beta, if you choose to download that, and even with an automatic installer, it may break your system. So stay away, unless you have a test machine with, that you don't use. Stay away from alphas and betas. Always go for the final release. Like Matthew said, it can be a hit and miss, but strictly my experience, LTS releases are still percentage-wise. I think it's a better gamble for the new user. But in terms of expectations, I've had really, really good luck on multiple machines. Lenovo, HP, IBM ThinkPad, stuff like that. You should expect most of the stuff to work. Now, in terms of things that may not work, Printer drivers sometimes can be problematical. Video drivers can be problematical. Running Windows programs inside Linux is possible with something called Wine. Your success may vary. Gaming, it's getting better. It may not be up to par yet with the Windows counterpart. But aside from those things, if all you want to do is just get a replacement for your Windows XP and you're not ready to buy something new, you just want to browse the web, watch your videos, watch YouTube, listen to podcasts, pay your bills, book your next, travel plans to wherever you want to go, any top of the line Linux distribution would be a perfect replacement. Or as a dual boot, strictly your choice. I get questions like this all the time. No, you don't have to erase everything on the hard drive. You can install. There will be, if you pick one with the automatic install, it will say something like install alongside Windows Vista or Windows XP or whatever. Click that, you are good to go. IG, what are some of the pitfalls you've had, trying different kinds of Linux?
I think apart from hardware support, which can be a little bit of a hit and miss, thankfully I've been very lucky as far as the hardware support on the main laptop that I've been using for the last couple of years. But as far as it mainly just revolves around professional level software. Basically, it all comes back to the Adobe Creative Suite or things like that. The things that big companies use, financial software or point of sale software or all of these things, they're all developed with the Windows operating system in mind. And because of the fact big companies are well invested in the Windows platform or increasingly in Mac as well, they're not really that motivated to make a Linux port of some of their more professional software. And Adobe is a very good example. So yeah, I mean, that'd probably be Linux's biggest pitfall for me at the moment. But and that's basically all I use Windows for, is just more professional level software. And but even that is only a small fraction of the time. The rest of the computing that I do is much more integrated and much more coherent and productive on a Linux desktop than it is on Windows and even the most recent iterations of Windows 8.
Matthew.
Well, to put it in simple terms, I use Linux because I want to. I use Windows because I have to. And that goes...
Shut up.
But love it. That goes right back into what IG was saying about commercialized support. I have to go back to Windows to manage some of my device. I have an iPad Air. I need Windows to manage that through iTunes. I've got a Sony MP3 player that I can't properly manage unless I'm in Windows. And then you have people that need more professional grade software, such as the Adobe Creative Suite and things like that. That it just isn't made available for Linux because these companies just don't have the motivation or the financial interest to make it available. And that's pretty much the way it is for me. If all of these tools and software suites were available on Linux, I wouldn't probably touch Windows at all, to be honest.
Okay, Spatry?
Well, the only caveat I'm having right now is HDMI support. And that could just be symptomatic of the latest Xorg that is available. But for the most part, I've had a fairly trouble-free experience. And I'm probably the only person on the panel that isn't dual booting. I finally got to that point where I felt I didn't need Windows anymore. I've got Wine running my favorite graphical applications. I'm using Kdenlive Live to edit all of my videos, and that does for me everything that Sony Vegas would do for me. And the rendering time is a lot faster in Linux for me than what Sony Vegas would do for me in Windows. So I can
second that.
Yeah, I am overall impressed with my experience. Linux has redefined how I use the computer, and I mean, there was somebody the other day that was mentioning that. That the only thing that's holding them back from switching over to Linux is that they don't have After Effects. And it's funny, I was just surfing the AUR yesterday, and I found out that we have Lightworks in the Arch user repository, so I'm thinking about downloading it to give it a whirl. Although I'm so used to using KDN Live, and now I have a whole series that I'm starting on it. Why would I want to use anything else? Because it runs great. Driver support on my new computer that I have right now. I had an issue in the past with the Wi-Fi drivers, but now we have up-to-date Wi-Fi drivers for it. But for the most part, when I decided to switch to Linux 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I slapped a Linux distro into my laptop. It was a Compaq at the time, and it powered everything. I'd never seen a Linux distribution do that before, and I decided to bite the bullet and actually learn how to use this because I had been trying out Linux distributions since '98, and I would try it, and maybe there was some little caveat that just kept me going back to Windows. And finally, I got to a point where I was able to satisfactorily get everything working and be able to balance my workflow in the way that I wanted to, that I decided, okay, now it's the time to get rid of that Windows partition and start using Linux full time. And I haven't looked back, and I'm very happy.
Cool. I was thinking, folks, we have come a long way. I mean, 10 years ago, we couldn't say that, Linux is 90% ready to replace your PC, 95%. 10 years ago, it wasn't even on the radar. But in 10 short years, imagine how far Linux has progressed. The Linux kernel is amazing. As a Windows user, I'm telling you, all you newbies out there, it is amazing. The Linux kernel is not the issue. Quality of the apps, there's room for improvement, but the kernel itself and what it can do, it's a marvelous piece of human technology. All right, let me end this by saying this. We've talked about, possible replacement. Excuse me. We are comfortably can say 90 to 95% sure if you pick the best of the best. What about 100%? I'm not ready to say that. I would like to. I can say 99%. You can get that close, and the only way I see it possible is if you buy a PC with Linux pre-installed out of the box. Because, look, if you buy a machine, whether it be Linux, Mac OS, or Windows, and something doesn't work, there's something wrong with that PC, take it back. But if you buy a pre-installed Linux PC, chances are you are not going to have any issue with hardware matching the software or any form of incompatibility. That shouldn't happen because it was pre-manufactured, if that makes sense to all the beginners out there. I will include Chrome OS as a form of Linux. I will include that in this conversation. Today I was just briefly searching the web. The Linux Mint, the Mint box, I believe is called, might be an alternative for you. Those machines and Chromebooks are the top selling laptop on Amazon, but those two machines, now there are probably more, but those two machines, in my opinion, they should work at the very least 99 to 100% out of the box. If they don't, and that goes with any machine, then there's something wrong with it. But that's my opinion. All right, well, let's go ahead and close this out. IG, any closing comments?
As far as if you're curious about the Linux operating system, then the best idea is just to go and have a look and have a try. Because of the fact that Linux has been pushing this cart of, try me out, I might work for you. It's become so easy to try out a Linux distribution. Ubuntu even have a virtualized experience that you can just sort of log into on the web that just gives you a very short, very shallow demo of what their desktop is like. But nearly every distribution out there that aims to be user-friendly has a live CD. You can download the ISO image, burn it to a disk, or even transfer it onto a USB flash drive using certain tools that they usually provide documentation for. And you can try out that distribution on your laptop just by booting from that USB stick or that CD. And that'll give you an excellent idea of how that operating system works and whether you can cooperate with it. And to be honest, you're probably going to learn a lot just through the process of doing that. And by the time you've finished, you might end up finding yourself enjoying the experience quite a bit. At least that's what my story was, and I'm sure many of the people listening and many of the people hosting the show tonight could agree with that as well. Just give it a go, and you'd be surprised about how much it can actually work, and how much, and just how far it's come just in the last 5 years alone. I think speaks very strongly for itself.
Okay, Matthew.
I would have to agree. Again, though, it's not for everybody. That part is true, but you're really not going to know that until you actually give it a try. You know, it's like buying a car. You got to drive it before you buy it, and that's kind of the way I feel about it. You know, there's so many different distributions out there that even if you try one and it's not for you, try another one. You know, there's a distro out there for everybody. As far as being able to 100% replace your PC, that really depends on what your needs are. If you're working in a professional environment and you need some of these commercialized professional tools, then maybe not. But I think for the average person, I think it's worth taking a chance on. Just download a few, try them out, and see what you think.
Okay, Spatry.
Well, at the end of the day, all I have to say is you will only get out of Linux what you put into it. If you go into this with a closed mind, you're really not going to get much out of it. But there are some benefits. You know, using a Linux distribution, you can expect to have more stability than you would come to expect with Windows, where with Windows you reboot, wash, rinse, and repeat. We leave our computers on and they run until the hardware fails for the most part. Now, and there are some other advantages. You know, you can learn more about how your computer works. You know, using Linux, you can revive an old or slow PC. You know, it won't make a race winner out of it, but at least, you know, it will run well. You know, you can use Linux to create a dedicated media center or video game machine, and that's the case with SteamOS now. You know, with Linux, you can run a home server for backup, streaming, torrenting, and more. So you can set up a server in your home that you can share files amongst many different computers that you may have in your whole household. There are some people that even use Linux for automating everything in their home, such as controlling their lights in the house. Let's say they're going away on a vacation and they have a machine that's controlling everything in the home. It's really amazing the potential that this has. You know, with Linux, you can work with your hard drives and partitions. You know, and also you can troubleshoot other computers. So let's say that Windows machine got a virus and you just can't even boot into the thing. You know, it's so infected. You know, you could take a live CD that has an antivirus software on there and you could scan that hard drive from booting off that live disk and clean and remove all of those viruses out of the system. There are so many different advantages, but going in there with the open mind is key.
Well, needless to say, guys, we can go through the wee hours of the morning, you know, talking about this, but you know, at the end of the night and at the end of this specific topic here, at least try it. And even if you try it and, you know, something didn't work, or maybe you saw it at a friend's house and you may wind up saying Linux sucks, it's just not true. Yes, some distros may not be fully tested, you know, Spatry and you know, I have joked about it, but most of them, or at least most of the top ones, they work most of the time. And if you're still, you know, skittish or squeamish, try purchasing one. Try it out. You know, I still enjoy Windows 7. You know, for me, from my experience, I really haven't noticed anything more stable versus Windows 7 or Linux, but I maintain it. The one thing I do hate, Spatry has talked about this, is the wash, rinse, and repeat cycle. Updates, reload, repeat, reboot. It drives me freaking nuts. But it's stable, and all the apps work. For me, all the apps work all the time. But for pure speed and fun, you can beat Linux. But the wash, rinse, and repeat, pass me the soap already.
Oh yeah,
all right.
That used to annoy me quite a bit too. So
yes, yeah. That's just as bad as getting bugs in Linux. It's just as bad. And anyway, that's for another topic. All right, Spatry, why don't you take us out?
All right. Well, thanks, Toss, for hosting the show tonight. Infinitely Galactic. We got to get together and do this more often, man, because we haven't seen you in over a year.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, for those of you who choose to stick around, Matthew, Toss today, and myself will be wheeling out the news and nonsense report. Thank you, Matthew, for joining us here. And also, I'd like to thank the Linux distro community for having us to host these shows. And just add Spatry on G+, and you will be kept up to date anytime that we have any future podcasts for the LDC. I'll have links in the show notes for everybody here on the panel. Check out their channels. They're well worth your time. Now, Infinitely Galactic is going to be releasing more videos now that he's just finished his degree. Congratulations to you on that one. And so I'll be looking forward to seeing more of your videos. And, of course, Matthew's got great content as well as Toss today. So thank you, all of you, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on
Catch
the
all
show.
of you. Oh, please come back again. And this has been fun. And as I always end most of my things that I do, we will catch all of you sometime in the future. Ciao.
Today's show was brought to you by the Linux Distro Community. Visit us today at linuxdistrocommunity.com and chat with us on Mumble or in IRC on the Freenode Network in the Linux Distro Community channel. The Linux Distro Community. Freedom through the sharing of knowledge.